Welcome, everybody. We're just waiting till everybody gets in the room, into our Zoom room. This is everybody's joining us from across the nation. This is such an important topic and such a critical time to be discussing our children and their welfare and their future and their education. And we're really excited about our guest, Peter, coming and sharing and speaking. All right. Well, Doris, how about I hand that over to you? And let's get this going.
Well, I want to say good morning because it's 10 o'clock in BC, but I know some of you it's afternoon already, and it's very exciting you're on with us this morning. We have an amazing guest. Peter Stock is the president of the Homeschool Legal Defense Association, and he's going to bring to us a whole bunch of great information about homeschooling in Canada, and statistics, and how are our kids doing when they move into adulthood, and homeschooling through high school. And I know there's going to be a lot of questions, so save them for the end and we'll try to get through them later on. And we will occasionally do some screen sharing so you can see what's going on. Tanya, should we show them our website?
Right, I was just realizing, yes, I'll quickly go on to the websites just so everyone knows, because some of you may need to, depending how long the presentation goes and the meeting goes, some of you may need to leave in advance. So if you go to Action4Canada's website, and that's with the number 4, this is a look at what we're doing across the nation. These are chapters in towns and cities, and what we're doing is we're working together with churches and pastors and parents and business owners and educators, etc., and trying to build communities within communities of like-minded people who are actually working together for very positive change. We're working with elected officials as well. Within what Action4Canada is doing, there were several of our chapter leaders that actually got elected as school board trustees in the last election in BC, Ontario, and Manitoba. And so we're very excited about that, because we deal with so many different issues that if any of our people go to run for an election, they're so well educated that they can debate anybody under the table on issues that are critical and important. So this is a good look at what we're doing. I'm going to skip over to under current issues. If you drop down, you'll see Homeschooling Revolution. And on the homeschooling page, there's, some really important information. This is a great video because another thing that we're doing as well is providing a speaker and leadership training courses for our youth. It started again, they're 5 weeks in length, and we started last week, Friday. Second one will be coming this Friday. And from the last set that we did between February and March, several of the individuals that had, oh, I'm sorry, you know what, this is the wrong video. It's another one, but on that one, several of the kids gave their presentations and their speeches, and it was phenomenal. We don't know which one of these kids may be that future leader, that is going to have the opportunity to change Canada. And so we want to give them the best opportunity to do that. Genevieve is one of those students. You see Doris here and other homeschoolers, Heather, Stephanie Jackson, etc. Christian, he is in Alberta, and he has started, along with his wife, an organization to help tutor homeschoolers. And so they both exited the education system in order to do that. All right, so a little bit more information on here that may be helpful to you, and then I'll just finish off with the Homeschool Association directory. Depending what your province you're in, we have vetted homeschooling associations across Canada, because we don't want to just tell you, pull your kids out of the school. We want to be able to say, you know what, here are some really good homeschooling organizations, and they're there to assist you and help you to get started. Down at the bottom of this page, we provide some resources. Today, of course, it's going to be the Homeschool Legal Defense Association. Peter is here to speak on that. Homeschoolers do need legal support as well. It's great to be a member. The government likes to interfere with what families are doing with their kids. And of course, they want to keep those kids in the public education system where they can control them and their sinister agenda can move forward. And of course, we're trying to help put a stop to that. Homeschool tips and more at the bottom of the page. Is there anything else, Doris, that you want me to touch on before we get started?
Yeah, no, just scroll down again to homeschool.today there. That was the one that the Homeschool Association started up. Peter, was it correct during COVID you got that launched to help families?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. All right. Great. Well, I'll let Peter then speak more on this. And Doris, if you want to go ahead and introduce Peter and bring him on. Good. I've stopped.
Yeah. So just a little backstory. Some of you already know me. I started homeschooling in the 90s, and I think that's when the Homeschool Legal Defense Association started. And I remember I had to keep my kids inside the house until lunchtime because I was worried somebody was going to come to my door and report me to social services and take my kids. And I was so grateful at the time that Homeschool Legal Defense Association, I'm just going to say HSLDA, was there in case. But as homeschooling grew, I grew more confident. And now, as I see what's happened, it's just big, it's huge, it's everywhere, and people know it's real. It's a great option. There's public school, private school, and now we've got homeschooling. And always knowing HSLDA was there in case I needed them. And so I supported them all these years because I knew that they were protecting your laws in other provinces. I'm from BC, so it was very important to me to keep supporting them. And so I'm thrilled to welcome Peter Stock from HSLDA, and he's just going to let us know all the great things going on in Canada. Go ahead, Peter.
All right. Thanks, Doris. I appreciate that. And thank you, Tanya. Well, let's start with a tiny bit of history. As Doris was saying, the modern homeschooling movement in Canada really started to take off in the 90s. That was the time. There were some families trying it in the 80s. But by the early 90s, governments were taking notice, and in many parts of the country, the law was unclear or in a gray area. And certain politicians and others didn't really like the idea of homeschooling. They didn't like the idea of not having control of our children's education. And so some parents were threatened with fines, jail time, or having their children apprehended. And that was when a number of families came together, BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, other provinces, and formed the Homeschool Legal Defense Association. So we've been in existence for over 30 years. And over that 30 years, we have fought in the courts and in the legislatures for better laws that respect our right to direct the education of our children. And the good news is, 30 years later, it is now legal in all 10 provinces and all 3 territories to home educate your children. So, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about the laws in each individual province because we could spend pretty much a day going through that. But what I will provide you is a resource. I've just put it in the chat, and you can see the link there. If you would like to know the law in your province, simply go to that link, and you can download a guide that gives you real detail on the situation in your province, what you need to know in regards to the law, what you have to do in terms of notifying, registering, or reporting. And every province is different. Most provinces are what we would call fairly free. Mostly all you have to do is notify. Maybe there is a modest amount of reporting at some point during the school year. Some provinces, however, and Quebec in particular, are much more difficult provinces to homeschool in. There is an immense amount of reporting, meetings with ministry officials, and also a requirement in Quebec, sadly, that children must write the provincial public school exams, and that's hard. That's hard because if you know anything about homeschooling, you know that you have the choice, you have the freedom to pick the curriculum that you feel is best for your child, and it might be different for each child in your family. And then, you know, for your children to be forced to write the public school exam means that on some level, at least in some subjects, you are going to be having to draw on the provincial curriculum, which is something you probably did not choose to do initially. So that's a real trying situation for a lot of families there. We are fighting that, and we will see if we can get that reversed at some point down the road. But anyway, that's kind of the situation across the country in terms of the law. Now, in terms of numbers, there's some really incredible news there. And I don't think anybody will really be that surprised to hear it. Prior to COVID, 2019, 2020 school year, there were approximately 100,000 students being homeschooled across Canada. Fast forward a year, and that number had doubled. Not surprisingly, a lot of families said, you know, we're not getting education in the public system or even in the private system, depending on the province. Our schools are locked down, or there's these rotating situations where they're in sometimes and out other times, and there's masks, and there's all kinds of stuff happening. And our kids are not getting, you know, maybe there's some online learning offered, but that's pretty hard for a kid 6 hours a day for sure. So there were a lot of families who said, you know, I'm going to go this other route. I'm going to try it out for a period of months or until things settle down. And, you know, what families found, and I was just saying this to Doris and Tanya before we got on the call here, what a lot of these families have found, and we surveyed the ones who joined our organization. Yes, they had intended to homeschool temporarily, but they found that the anxiety levels in their children had dropped. They found their kids were advancing academically much quicker than before. They found that they were enjoying their time together as a family, and so the vast majority of those families have continued on for the long term, even though their decision initially was just a temporary one. And so 3 years later, we're in a situation where the numbers across Canada have essentially doubled. And that is also the case across the United States and many other countries around the world where we have connections. So, and I don't think that should surprise any of us. And of course, there are an incredible number of resources for families to use, curriculum, online courses, and just the internet generally is a valuable tool. It's a dangerous thing as well, of course, but that's another subject. Okay, I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about some of the benefits that homeschooling provides that bricks and mortar schools, and this is both public, private, bricks and mortar schools can't or don't necessarily provide. And some of these are going to be very obvious. Some of these are going to be things that you haven't necessarily thought about, and some of these might be brand new to you. So let's just go through the list quickly. I'll rhyme them off, and we can talk more about them if you have questions later. So first of all, of course, there's the opportunity to learn independently and develop self-study habits. Now, this does not typically happen in the bricks and mortar system, but students who are homeschooled, especially through the high school years, develop their study habits to the point where they are independent or self-motivated students by the time they're ready to go on to post-secondary. And because of this, and this is incredible news for those who don't know it, because of this particular fact, universities, the top universities and colleges across Canada actually give preference to homeschooled applicants now over their public school counterparts, because they recognize that homeschooled students have developed these self-study habits, and they are much more likely to be successful once they enter colleges, and their college or university. And that's important to those institutions, because they don't want students who are going to flunk out. They want students who are going to be successful. It costs them money. It costs them money to engage in the admissions process, millions of dollars at a bigger institution. And so they don't want that money to go to waste. They want that tuition money to keep coming in too. And so there's a financial incentive for universities and colleges to get the best students. And they have come to recognize that those, in fact, are home educated students by and large. All right, so that's number one. The next benefit of home education is that you can uniquely tailor an education that meets the needs, the learning style, etc., of your child. And of course, the goal of a formal education is not just simply to impart knowledge. In fact, the truth is, it doesn't matter how good a teacher is in any system or how good a parent is at teaching. You will never cover everything that a person needs to learn or know. But the goal of formal education is ultimately to learn how to learn, And so if we can impart that, if we can teach our kids how to teach themselves ultimately over time, then we have succeeded. That is the goal of formal education. And of course, that's not just the goal at an elementary or high school level. That's the goal right through the post-secondary levels too. If you've got a bachelor's degree in university in one subject, that says you're capable of learning any other subject, at least to that level. And if you've got a master's degree or a doctorate, it says the same thing. You're capable of learning to that level. The knowledge is the secondary part of that. You can obtain knowledge in any subject if you've learned how to learn. All right, let's move on. Flexibility. So here's this is obvious, I suppose, but maybe it's not known to everybody on the call. There's a real opportunity to focus on the gifts that a child has, whether they be musical, athletic, artistic, or even a hobby. You can create a specialized program around the interests, around the gifts that a child has. And we have seen so many young people who have, maybe music's their interest, and they are able to structure their day so that their guitar practice is the first thing they do for however many hours, it might be several, and they become not just proficient, but excellent in their chosen area or in their gifting. And so by the time they're done home educating, they're getting into the best universities, or they're going off and having real success in careers, etc. This applies to sports, this applies to the arts, and many other things as well. So again, there's the flexibility there. That's probably one aspect of it. But there's also structuring the formal education around the ability to, or around the need to meet a schedule that might involve ice time or certain lessons or whatever it may be. All right, a few other benefits. Life skills. So teaching life skills. Now you're not going to be taught many life skills in the bricks and mortar system typically, but think about things like cleanliness, diet, employment skills, even time management. These things are not a deliberate, they're not deliberately taught in the bricks and mortar system, but they can certainly be taught at home and probably will be. Let's add on to that financial wisdom. So maybe for younger kids, it's just learning about money, but as they get older, savings, taxes, investments, budgeting. I think most of us were not taught that in the public system. And digging a little deeper, how about educating and talking about and discussing things like current events, politics, your family politics, worldview studies, and then deeper still, your faith and imparting your faith to your children. You have the freedom to do that in a home environment, and you don't have the government looking over your shoulder telling you what you can and cannot do. And as faith is pushed out of the public square, this becomes increasingly important as we raise our children. I'm not telling you what to teach your kids. You're deciding that. But I trust that as parents, you love and know your kids the best. You know what's right for them, and you're going to teach them what is best and right for them. All right, what about other forms of education or other methods of education? So just for an example, a lot of parents who home educate really enjoy the Charlotte Mason method. And if you don't know about that, we can talk a little bit about that later. That is one approach. Another approach is what's called classical education, and this is what the ancients did with their children, the Romans, the Greeks, and a third area that you could potentially get into, and you will never see in a public school, is a study of the great books. And what are the great books? These are the books that underlie Western civilization, what were written by the ancients, the Romans, the Greeks, the Bible, and into the medieval and the modern era, the great authors of those ages as well, Chaucer and Kipling and so on. Now, we have created a great books collection in our HSLDA digital library for members. So that is a free service for our members. You can borrow the great books and read them at your leisure. And this is something, by the way, that not just our students can do, but the parents can too, if they wish. Travel. Again, this is sort of obvious when you think about it, but when you're home educating, you can take it on the road. Home education doesn't mean in the home. It doesn't mean exclusively in the home. In fact, if you know anything about home education, you've probably seen that most home educating families are actually out in the community a fair bit more than the average family. And so one of the things they're able to do, one of the things we're able to do is take our education plan with us wherever we go. And it's a great thing, quite frankly, to be able to say, family vacation's happening in September. We are going on the road then. And yes, we're going to continue with our math in the morning, but we're going to spend the afternoons doing activities at museums or wherever we want to go, the beach. And we can do that because we have the flexibility. And the wonderful thing is, when it's not high tourist season, the prices are lower and the lineups are shorter, and we can have a lot of fun together. Away from the crowds. So there's that opportunity as well. And okay, so a few more things. Debate is something that does not happen, frankly, in the public system anymore. It did once upon a time. You might get the occasional year or day where public speaking happens, and lots of kids dread that, but actual debate is something that is extinct in the public system, and yet it's so essential to success in the world. The ability to formulate your ideas, research your position, and then ultimately craft arguments which you use to convince others is an incredibly valuable skill that is useful in so many careers and lines of work. So training children in debate is something, especially in the upper years, that we can do as home educators that will give our kids an advantage in life. All right. A few other things. Now, I talked about the flexibility of the work schedule. As our kids get older, there's an opportunity for internships and real work experience that they would not necessarily have if they were in a bricks and mortar institution with set hours. So, for example, my own son, it's actually my third child, who is currently at the grade 11 level, is working one day a week with a construction crew. He's working, 7 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon in a commercial setting, doing construction work with a crew, and he's doing that for a full term, and that's an internship for him. He's actually getting paid for it too, which is a bonus. But it's an opportunity for him in particular to decide, well, is this area of trade something that I'm interested in? Is it an area I want to pursue for a career? Do I want to go into the trades generally? And so he the answer to that might be yes or no, but it's part of his educational experience. And what he's learning, of course, will stand him in good stead his whole life, regardless of whether he enters the trades in a year or two's time. Relationships. As our kids grow, there's, if they're apart from us 6 to 8 hours a day, we lose the opportunity to develop relationship with our child, or at least as much of a relationship. And many home educating families will know this. We've got we've got this wonderful experience of watching our children grow in front of our very eyes. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't challenges along the way. It's hard to be both a parent and a teacher. I'm not going to, I'm not going to try and whitewash that. It's definitely a challenge, especially for moms who, if they're the primary teacher, to maintain those relationships, to be the mom, to be the loving mom, and yet to be the disciplinarian and the teacher at the same time. But it is also incredibly valuable as we develop relationships with our kids. One of the other advantages that we have found with home education, because we are stepping outside of a very rigid and structured school system to one where we can set the rules ourselves, is second language learning. So one of the great programs that a number of homeschooling families have taken up in learning a second language is doing tutoring online with a native speaker in a given language, let's say Spanish, in another country, and doing so for a very minimal cost. So I'm aware of, for example, of tutoring services in Spanish that are offered by Guatemalan citizens. They may even be, college educated, who will do one-on-one tutoring at an incredibly reasonable price. And so kids are learning Spanish from a real Spanish speaker, and they're doing it one-on-one, which is also incredible. So there's some options there that are just amazing. All right, now another important reason to consider home education is if your child has any sort of exceptional need, a learning disability, or even if they're, incredibly bright, could be anything on a spectrum, a physical disability. And any of those sorts of impediments to effective learning in the bricks and mortar system can often be met or at least improved upon in the home. And here's why. It's because our students do get that one-on-one instruction. So instead of being in a classroom where there are distractions and potentially bullying and other anxiety-causing issues, a child is in a safe and loving environment where they are getting individual instruction. So what we typically see when a child is withdrawn from the public system and brought home to be home educated, if they have an exceptional need of some sort, is they have greater success. They may still be behind their same age counterparts elsewhere in terms of what they're learning or their advancement educationally, but we do see greater progress or quicker progress with such children. And so, and it shouldn't be surprising to any of us. Again, you're getting that one-on-one instruction, which is so critical, especially when you have a learning disability. I should mention, we also offer as an organization consultation with a special needs consultant who's an expert in these issues. And so we offer that free with your membership, and you're able to consult with our expert and find the resources you need to help your child. So it's not simply, hey, just pull your kid out of school and then who knows what will happen, but rather we can help you to create an educational program and find the resources you need to meet the challenges that your child has. All right, for some families, another benefit is an opportunity to volunteer. So one of our children often would be once a month down at a local retirement home, spending time with some of our much older citizens. And that was a benefit to both, benefit to our children just to see another side of life. It was a blessing to folks in the retirement home. Some families have a missions focus, and so maybe whether it's a short-term mission or even a long-term mission overseas, home education definitely helps to facilitate that. And so again, the flexibility that home education provides does allow for that. And I'll just conclude by mentioning the following things, and that is that parents know their child's strengths, weaknesses, their desires, and their goals the best. Nobody knows them better than you do. and a parent is the most motivated to help their child succeed in life. And only a parent will guide and help them over the long term. And only a parent will pick up a child when they stumble and make mistakes, sometimes repeatedly. A teacher, as wonderful as a teacher may be, and there's some great ones, there's some terrible ones too, of course, but there's some great ones out there. As wonderful as they may be, they're not with your child for the long term. They're not going to be. Their goal may be to advance them a certain distance down the academic track, but you are the one who is going to care not only about their academics, but their emotional health, their physical health, their spiritual health, and so on. And finally, you are the only person who can lead them with their goals, vision, and worldview in mind. So you're the person. I think we all know this as parents inherently, but home education allows for this in a way that having a child in a bricks and mortar situation does not allow as easily. Now, for parents who are, thinking about this and thinking about taking their child out of school and wondering about putting their child back in at some point potentially, let me share the following thoughts. First of all, taking a child out of school is, especially during the middle of a school year, is something that can trigger consternation, concern from school authorities, depending on the school. Sometimes it's a very smooth process. They're happy to say, well, okay, that's your choice, go for it. The law allows you to do it. But in other cases, a principal or teacher or other school official may be concerned about the grant money, the grant money they're losing, because they lose, well, in Ontario, it's about $14,000 a child that's spent per child per year on education in this province where I live. And it's similar in many other provinces across Canada, $11,000, $12,000, $13,000, $14,000. And so there's a lot of money that's not going into the school if a child or a family of children are removed. And so, if you pull 4 children out of the school, you're pulling $60,000 out of the educational system, and that hurts. And so some principals, some will react to that. Withdrawing a child during the school year in particular can trigger an investigation in some provinces. So what we recommend as an organization is please join HSLDA first, and then our lawyer can lead you through the process and provide you support along the way so that you do not run into trouble. That is what we would strongly recommend if you're pulling your child during the school year. Join us first, and then if you're doing it, if you're deciding I'm going to start homeschooling this coming September, for example, there is less likelihood of any sort of investigation or trouble. However, it's still a great idea to have HSLDA on your side if you do encounter other challenges along the way. Now, some parents, I would say most parents and most mothers in particular, do have this concern in the back of their mind. Well, maybe I can home educate my child when they're 5. I mean, it can't be that hard, right? I mean, how hard is kindergarten? How hard is grade 1? Counting and letters and so on. But gee, I don't know about the later years. Will I mess up my child? Will I ruin them for life? This is a fear that many parents have. And my answer to you is, well, it's a multifaceted answer, but let me start with this. First of all, here's what the academic research tells us. The academic research tells us that you do not need a teaching certificate to teach your child. In fact, the academic research says that the parents who do not have a teaching certificate have children who have the same academic outcomes as those who have parents with a teaching certificate. So that teaching certificate doesn't mean anything when it comes to educating a child in the home. So that's number one. Number two, the academic research also tells us that on average, home educated children do better in a number of subjects, but particularly in reading and writing and in math, the 3 R's, they tend to score on average much higher than their public school counterparts, significantly higher, statistically higher. You can find studies that give you different numbers, but 15 to 30% higher on scores, on testing, on those sorts of subjects, on those core subjects. The third thing is, if this is something that you find is not working for you on some level, it's too hard, money's an issue, whatever the case may be, and you decide that you do want your child to go back into some sort of bricks and mortar school at some point, you will not have trouble getting your kids back into school at the appropriate grade level. There are a couple of reasons for this, but the biggest one is actually financial, and it's what I was saying earlier. The fact of the matter is that the schools systems, both public and private, rely on funding, and you bringing your child along gives them funding, and so they want your child. And so they're going to make allowances. They're going to say, yes, we're willing to recognize the work you've done as a home educating parent for the last 3, 5, 7, 9 years, whatever it is, and we're going to place your child where it's appropriate. And of course, that is obviously subject to some observation over time as well. If your child is doing very poorly in the grade they're assigned, then there would obviously be a discussion about that. And if they're doing better than ever, which wouldn't surprise me in most cases, then they may be a little bit bored back in the school system. But anyway, be that as it may, you will not have trouble getting your child back into a bricks and mortar institution if that is what you choose to do down the road. All right, so hopefully that fear about I'm going to ruin my child is something that we can sort of put to the side and say, yes, we understand that fear, but experience has shown us that will not be the case for your family. Okay, I was going to talk a little bit about homeschooling through high school. It's a little bit different because homeschooling through high school is a time when our children are starting to become self-studiers, for the lack of a better word. They have learned self-study habits. They've learned how to learn independently by this point. Grade 9, grade 10, they are perhaps doing some online courses, or they're learning from a textbook, and they're able to read that textbook. They're able to follow through the sample problems that are provided, and then start to do the work that has been assigned in terms of questions and problems, and usually with a fairly minimal amount of supervision. Now, the bigger challenge with our teenagers sometimes is just plain laziness. They'd rather be out doing something else, and so discipline might be the bigger issue. Discipline of time, discipline of sitting down to do the work, and in some respects, this is actually quite natural because our kids are changing physically at that time as well, and their emotions are changing, and there's hormones happening and so on as well. So this is actually a great time to be homeschooling because, again, at a time when our children are particularly vulnerable to social pressure as they go through puberty and so on, you are there as their parent. You're providing a safe environment where they can grow, develop, and learn about themselves and the world around them, without the pressure of a peer group that is often quite vicious, quite frankly. And I don't assign that simply to the public school system. I think it can be that way in any situation, from quite frankly, from a youth group to a private school, and of course a public school too. So home educating through the high school years is neat for that reason alone. It's just great to watch your children grow through those years. The second thing is, as I was mentioning earlier, home educated children who follow through the high school years do have a great advantage when it comes to applying to post-secondary educational institutions, college, university, and so on. They are given preference by the better institutions. And so you're giving them an advantage in life by doing this. That's another incredible thing to consider. There are other considerations too, and one is, can you teach subjects at that level? And I think this is one that trips up some parents because maybe you feel confident about the language arts side of things, but maybe you're not so confident about, let's say, chemistry or biology because, hey, maybe you didn't do so well at those things when you were in high school, you know, and it's not the pathway that you chose in life. And that's totally understandable. But what we have developed as homeschoolers over the years is, I won't call it a system, but we've developed methods of dealing with these challenges. The fact that some subjects might be too tough for us individually as parents. So what we tend to do are one of two things. Or one of three things. We might go with online courses in some of those tougher subjects, and there are great ones available. In fact, one of the challenges you'll find as a home educator, when you're starting out, is the sheer number of options that you have in terms of textbooks, in terms of courses, is almost overwhelming. And so it's really hard to narrow them down. So let me segue just a little bit before I get back to what I was saying about teaching the subjects. And that is to say, when you're looking for curriculum in particular, first of all, you want to go with the curriculum providers that exist across Canada. It is possible to buy books off Amazon if you know what you want, and you might even save a few bucks. But the folks that specialize in providing curriculum, and they're booksellers in most provinces across Canada, are the people who run them are homeschooling families themselves. And so they do it because they care. They do it because they want to serve our community. And they're also experts in the subject matter. So the value that they provide to you is not just the fact that you can get the book you need, of course, but also that they can recommend a book that's right for your child. And they can help you evaluate your child's learning method, what they've used in the past, what their goals are, and they can make some recommendations to you about what will work best for your child. And so that's the value added they have, because nothing's more frustrating than getting a textbook and spending, you know, a bunch of money on it and finding out this really isn't working well. You know, this is not the right book. So getting the right book is incredibly important, both for financial reasons and simply to avoid frustration. Okay, so getting back to how do I teach? Okay, so a few things. Online courses are a possibility. Again, there are a lot of textbooks available. Another is what are called, and for those who aren't familiar, we call them co-ops or cooperatives, where a group of parents get together, and perhaps one parent within that group is stronger in the sciences and is able to offer some teaching or tutoring in that subject, and perhaps you as the parent who's stronger in the language arts is able to offer some teaching or tutoring in that area. And so we come together cooperatively as a community to focus on the areas where some of us may be weak and offer our strengths for the benefit of all. So that's something that tends to happen more as we get into, it's done at the elementary years as well, and it could be done with fairly simple subjects, but it's particularly valuable once you get into the high school years. All right, so online courses, curriculum, and cooperatives. Now, the biggest challenge that you may actually face, even if you're able to surmount all these other challenges I've just mentioned, is that your student themselves may not want to homeschool through the high school years. They may say, but all my friends are going to this school, all my friends are doing this. And that is a real consideration. What do we do about social opportunities? And in my own personal experience, we have found as a family that this is the biggest challenge we actually face with home education, is ensuring, we have to work hard at this. This is what we really have to work hard at, is ensuring that our kids have the social opportunities that they need. And so we do a little extra driving. You know, Dad's a taxi driver in a sense. I spend evenings taking kids to gymnastics and basketball and volleyball and youth group, and you know the list goes on. And that's okay, because it does provide our children with that social outlet that everyone needs, quite frankly, but it becomes especially important as they get into the teen years. And so again, you know, the support groups and co-ops that we have, if they can work together to meet the needs of teens, that's also really valuable. All right, we're getting nearer to the end here, and I will, let me just check my list here because there were one or two other subjects we were going to cover. Yes, so dads. So I was going to speak for just a couple of minutes about the role of dads. And of course, when we say dads, we're talking about the non-teaching spouse, or the spouse, let's say, that's probably off in the workforce and is teaching less than the stay-at-home spouse. And there are a few, and again, this is a talk that we give that can last up to an hour. So I will cover the key points, but we can discuss them more later in question and answer if you want. So just a few points about the dad or the working spouse, and that is the idea that really our children need to be learning all the time. That would be our goal as a home educating family. Yes, we have formal instruction, and quite frankly, in terms of the typical homeschooling day for an elementary level student, home education may only take 2 to 3 hours. So, you can do this between 9 and 12 in the morning, usually pretty effectively. And the afternoon is often left free for other activities, whether they be, swimming lessons or music lessons or field trips or time at the park, whatever it might be. But we tend to take an approach of learning all the time. So aside from the formal academic subjects, there are skills that dads typically can teach. And these might be things, and it depends on your family and it depends on you. They might be things like auto repair and woodworking. Dads are often sporting. They're interested in sports and home maintenance. Those are some common activities. And of course, I'm generalizing this, there's an entire spectrum there. But the truth of the matter is, even dad's youngest helper can learn much just by being at his side as dad undertakes various tasks. And the second point I would make is that there needs to be a sharing of the burden. So I was mentioning earlier, it's hard to be a mom and a teacher at the same time. That's hard for most moms, and doing that all day long. And so by the end of the afternoon, there's often a seemingly endless list of chores to do, from laundry to shopping to preparing dinner and cleaning up. And so to ensure that this isn't mom's burden all alone, dad can usually routinely help with some of those chores. And of course, every family is different. You're going to have to find out what works best for you. I'll tell you, in my family, I do all the laundry, and I have done for, I don't know, close to 15 years, I think. So, and that started with babies, and they're pretty messy. So I know all about stains. Anyway, you can decide what works best in your family, but let's recognize that home education is and the work that goes into the home itself really needs to be a shared responsibility. Now, here's another thing for dads and parents generally to think about, and this is what I would call do what you'd have them do. So children tend to mimic the activities they see their parents engaged in. And so if you watch a lot of television, for example, so will your children ultimately. But if you spend a lot of time reading, they will also likely tend to read a lot themselves. So that doesn't mean you should never watch TV. I'm not telling you that, but choose your activities wisely and your children will naturally follow in your footsteps. Okay, another thing dad can do here, and that's simply encouraging mom. Some days and weeks are harder than others. So recognize when mom is needing a break. That might mean an evening out or time away with girlfriends, or occasionally even a family holiday. And sometimes it might mean canceling school for a day. Encourage mom to make her own needs a priority and affirm her as she does. Two more thoughts here. Plan together. So home education isn't just mom's burden as quote unquote the teacher. Mom and dad both have unique insights into what is best for each of their children. And so you should both spend time together evaluating what each child should have to meet their academic, social, and spiritual needs. And so I would suggest two things. One is you want to have sort of an annual meeting where you really dig deeply into this. What are we going to do in September? What are we going to do in September for Johnny or Jane? And what do they need? And then the second thing is you want to reevaluate as the year goes by. What is working? What isn't working well? 5 of the 6 subjects are going super, but there's a real problem in math. What are we going to do about it? Do we need to go a new direction? Do we need to get a different textbook, or do we need to bring in some help with this? Maybe we need to go slower. Maybe we need to go quicker. One of my kids was just an expert speller and won the local spelling bee and all that. We didn't spend a lot of time on spelling. We had 15 minutes allotted for it, but it was like, that's not the best use of her time. We're in fact going to set that subject aside this year because she's so far ahead. But there's this other subject where she could use the extra time. So we're going to shift things around in our schedule because we want to encourage we want to focus on areas where we're weak and give them extra attention, and we don't want to spend time doing things that are not going to have a lot of impact. All right, and finally, dads in particular can help provide what we might call the 1,000-foot view. So it's easy for moms in particular to lose sight of the forest for the trees because they're caught up in the immediacy of teaching minute to minute, and they're not always accomplishing everything they set out to do. In fact, moms, and this is very common, moms will often feel that they have failed. You'll hear that sometimes from homeschooling moms. It's not true, but that's how they feel. So despite the occasional poor result, maybe the child fails a test, oh my goodness, they're in grade 2 and they've already failed math. Oh, it's terrible. Sometimes dads can provide an encouraging longer term perspective on the overall progress and development of their children. And just remind their mom they're taking an incredibly important role in shaping the future of this child. And one poor test result is not the end of the world. So anyway, we know that the home education journey is greatly rewarding for both the children and the parents. But as maybe some of you are starting to recognize, it's also hard work. So sharing that workload with your spouse can help to lighten the burden somewhat. And it's, I would say, indispensable in making your homeschool the best it can possibly be. All right, maybe I could let's see, we're at 5 to 2. I'll take a few minutes to just briefly talk about post-secondary applications, because even though this is not something likely anybody on the call is doing in the next few minutes or next few days or whatever, it's something that you may want to be thinking about for down the road. So I'll just give you the briefest overview. We spend 2 hours talking about this in a video. I'll give you the 2-minute version, and then I can direct you to resources on this so you can take it further if it's of interest to you. So basically with post-secondary admissions, what we would say is that every institution, every college, every university has a different application process. Now, I know that if you live in most provinces and you are attending a public, you're in the public system, there is a single process, and you would apply and say, I want to go to this university or that university, maybe list a few of them, and you use the same form, and they have a system that works for them that way. For home educated families, it's completely different. Every university and most community colleges have multiple admissions tracks. So in other words, there are multiple different ways that one can apply for admissions to a college or university. And because, and the reason for this is very, it's going to be very obvious to you when I say it, but the reason for this is that universities have traditionally taken students from other provinces and from overseas. So there have always been students applying who do not have a high school diploma from the province that university or college is in. So they have to have another system for evaluating whether or not they want to accept a student who is from outside those particular provincial boundaries. So in some cases, and let's just talk about universities for a second, they may be looking for a standardized test result. They may be looking for a high school transcript of some sort from wherever you have done high school, and that can be a homeschool high school transcript. There's nothing wrong with that. They could be looking for a portfolio. They might have entrance exams or an essay that you write, or some combination of those things. And another method for applying, quite simply, is what are called transfer credits. Transfer credits are credits that you've earned at another institution that the institution you're applying to will accept as equivalent to one of their own courses. So how do I get a university credit to get into university? Well, there are a couple of ways to do that. One is to apply and take courses with an online university. So that might be a place like Athabasca University, which many of you would be familiar with. Guelph does this as well, and there's several others, both in Canada and the United States, that do offer online courses. And typically people do not have to have any sort of prerequisites or accreditation to apply to do online university courses, which is wonderful, because it means your high school student can take some of these online university courses, use the credits to apply to the university or college of their choice. So that's one method. The other method for obtaining a transfer credit is what is called the Advanced Placement Test, or AP test. And these are tests that are basically tests in specific subjects like English, biology, chemistry, etc., at the first-year university level. They're standardized tests that are written once a year. They're offered by an organization called the College Board, and you pay a modest fee to write each test or exam. And based on the test result, you can apply to a college or university with that as a transfer credit in hand. So if I do reasonably well at the English AP test, and I take that result with me to apply to the University of British Columbia, they'll say, great, yes, we will accept that as part of your application. Now, here's the really neat thing. If you did 6 AP tests, 6 different subjects, that could account for an entire proof of high school education by itself, without any other proof whatsoever. And the university is quite happy to accept that. And I'll take that a step further and say that if your marks are high enough on the AP tests, there are several universities in Canada that will actually grant first-year credit for those courses or for those test results. In other words, if you had 6 outstanding AP test results in 6 different subjects, you could apply to somewhere like the University of Ottawa or perhaps UBC. I haven't checked their site on this lately. And they would give you first-year credit for that, meaning that you could actually enter UBC in second year with first year already behind you, because you've got these AP test results. Anyway, those are some exciting things to think about. Those are possibilities that home educated students have at their hand, at their disposal, as tools to successful post-secondary applications. And if you want more information on them, the homeschool.today website that Tanya referred to earlier, or maybe it was Doris, I can't remember who brought it up on the screen at the time, but homeschool.today has much more information on this topic. It's free for anybody. You don't have to be an HSLDA member to view. There's a good video on this that talks to some homeschool grads who've gone off to college and university. And also in that video, there's an interview with admissions officers from a college, a university, and from a trades association. So you'll get more information there about that process. And I would encourage you to check out those videos. They are free. So the final point I'll just leave you with before we get into questions and answers, because we're pretty close to the hour here, is just simply what HSLDA offers. So we have, as I mentioned, we're an organization that was founded over 30 years ago. Our primary purpose was to defend and promote the rights and freedoms of home educators, the right and freedom of your family to decide on the educational choices that you would like to make, and home education obviously being the one that we promote. We continue to do that advocacy work. And, the truth of the matter is, as I mentioned with Quebec, the law there changed fairly recently and started forcing home educated students to have to write the provincial public school exams. Not a great thing, but our lawyers continue to press on that one. And we continue to lobby at the Quebec legislature and with Quebec what are they called? MNAs, members of the National Assembly. And we hope to get a change in that situation for our Quebec families soon. So we do that lobbying work, and you might say, well, why should I join an organization? Homeschooling is free and legal. It doesn't, the problems in Quebec probably won't affect me in Ontario or BC anytime soon. That may or may not be true. The fact of the matter is we have councils of ministers of education that meet on a regular basis. They share their ideas, and there are politicians who believe that it's the state and not the parent who should decide what children are taught. And we have serious problems in our public school system, as we know right now. We even have problems in our private school systems, or private schools, I should say. They're not necessarily systems, where there's indoctrination happening. And certainly there's some politicians who do not want to leave our home educated children out of that indoctrination. So I do believe we are going to have a fight on our hands in the years to come, and defending those rights. I will tell you that in a number of nations in Europe, and these are not backward nations necessarily, these are countries like France, Germany, Italy, Spain, there is either a complete ban on homeschooling, or where homeschooling has been free and legal in the past, there are increasing and sometimes very severe restrictions. So these things have happened in recent years. And again, it's politicians who want to indoctrinate children. That's what's at the bottom of this. One of the great things that we have going for us in Canada is that our numbers are growing, as I mentioned at the beginning of the talk. The more families that are home educating, the more critical mass we have, the easier it is to push back. If we have to, we'll show up at the legislature and rally in defense of our freedoms. So we will do those sorts of things. Hopefully it doesn't come to that. Hopefully we're able to convince politicians that they need to do the right thing and respect our rights. And that is why our organization exists primarily. The second thing that we do that is equally important to the families that are affected by it are when families face a legal challenge of some sort to their home education, we are there with our lawyer to provide a legal defense. So you get a knock at the door, late in the day, and there's a social worker there. What do you do? What would you do as a mom, as a dad, faced with that situation, especially if there's a police officer there too? It can be quite intimidating, quite frightening. Well, HSLDA members know what to do. They pick up the phone, they call our lawyer, who is able to respond immediately, and they get the advice they need, they get the representation they need, and they get the problem resolved quickly before there is a major problem. And so that's the second service we provide. Now, I don't want to scare people. The fact of the matter is, of the dozens of people on this call, if you were all homeschooling, most of you would never have a major legal challenge to your home education. That's historically, that would not be the case. Many of you would have a minor challenge or problem to resolve at some point over the course of a decade, which we could help you with. And that could be as simple as, CRA, the CRA isn't giving me my child tax credit because they don't have proof of education, or I'm being called for jury duty. What do I do with my kids for 2 weeks? So we can help through those. We can help you through those situations. We have experience in dealing with them. And there are many similar sorts of situations that can come up that we can help with because our staff are experts and they've been doing this for a long, long time. Those are the key legal and professional services we provide. I'll briefly mention a few other things that we do. We first of all, and this won't apply to most people directly, but we do provide access to insurance for groups that want to meet. So, you want to play pickup hockey, or you want to have a support group or a co-op. If you're organizing one of those things, getting access to insurance can actually be the deal breaker if you can't get the insurance. So we provide access to affordable insurance. That's one of the services we provide. As I mentioned earlier, we have curriculum consultants and exceptional needs consultants, and you get free consultations with them as a member. And finally, we have a digital library, which I also mentioned briefly before. Over 3,000 ebooks over 400 audiobooks. And these are wholesome books. This is not your local public library. There's not junk on the shelves. We've picked through these books to make sure these are things that you can feel comfortable with your child reading at an age-appropriate level. And again, that's free with your membership. Some really great books in there, including books on exceptional needs, books on how to home educate and successful home educating, books on parenting, books on faith, and then all kinds of collections for kids, both from the youngest readers to the high school age, including the classics. So that's the bottom line. We also have a mag. Oh, I got to pull that back a little bit. No, that doesn't show so well. We have a magazine that we publish 2 times a year as well, and you get that as part of your membership. So anyway, you can check out our website, hslda.ca, if you're interested to learn more. And as I said, the other website, homeschool.today, has if you're just thinking about getting started, this is perhaps, in a sense, the more important website to talk about today, because it gives you a lot of information about getting started and answers a lot of the questions that you are likely to have. Anyway, you probably have some questions now, so why don't we get into a Q&A for a little while?
Right. Oh, Peter, well, thank you so much. That was absolutely amazing information. And I think it was just so critical for you to come on today, because the service that HSLDA is providing is imperative with the climate that we're facing right now, with the government trying to infiltrate all levels of education. And I know you said something that was very key, and I want to address that right now. I've said this before on my shows that, you know, in the public education system, parents pulled their kids out and they put them in the private schools, thinking that they would get the better, higher education, their kids would be safe there. And then, of course, now the private schools, Christian schools, independent schools have these accommodations because the LGBTQ lobby groups and the government have started funding. They've started receiving that funding. And so with that, they felt compelled to sign on to accommodations, which invites this into their school, and then it grows from there. So we have Christian schools that ended up signing accommodations last year, September here in BC, last March, without their members knowing. And next thing you knew, the books are now entering the schools. The furries are now entering the schools. We have the Chilliwack Christian School that has a child that was identifying as a cat with the litter box. You guys are hearing about this, but it's real. And I have evidence coming that with the SOGI, within the SOGI resource, they're actually promoting the furries, which is the bestiality. So my point in saying this is that we were appealing to the private school parents to say, come and help us fight this fight in the public schools, because they're coming for you next. And so we've also been reaching out to every parent, homeschooling parents, help us to fight this fight on the front line that's going on in the education system, because they're coming for you next. And so I would just really encourage, we need every parent, every citizen, every grandparent, every taxpayer, everybody who possibly could get in this. This is about morality. This is about protecting the hearts and minds of our children. And so that's one of the reasons why I showed you the map at the beginning. For anybody that just signed on, I think what I'll do is I'm just going to show for anybody that came after, that's probably not coming up because I didn't click the button. And then we'll get to the Q&A, Peter, thank you. Sure. So for anybody that showed up late, this is what Action4Canada looks like across the nation. We have about 100 chapters, but we're vetting and we have several hundred people to vet. So if you are somebody that's in a community without an Action4Canada chapter, we would encourage you to join. And I can show you where the link is to do that, to become a chapter leader. We work together with churches and parents and within the community, to take back all levels of government and bring some sanity back into, our communities. So then I'm just going to skip over here. I hope I've got the right page. All right, so under current issues, maybe I'll do it so that you afterwards can see how easy it is. If you go to Homeschooling Revolution, All right, and I'm going to just show you the political LGBTQ page because this is one of the things that Peter's talking about. There's also critical race theory, the climate change. All of this is to rip families apart, and it's known as the Marxist agendas. They're changing the hearts and the minds of the kids because they know that they're the future of this nation, the future leaders. So we better be very serious about, the future leaders that we're going to be raising up to counter this. And so on the homeschooling page under Homeschooling Association Directory, if you scroll down, you can see your province. We have vetted in advance reliable homeschool associations. And then Peter's information, just in case you were missing it in the chat, is right here. I've already also included the guide that he referred to, Homeschool Laws Across Canada. Other information as well that as we get this, we're trying to post it on the webpage to make everything as user-friendly as possible. The other thing that we're doing, if somebody wants to volunteer to do this, is that you see Homeschool BC has a bit of a special link, as does Saskatchewan. Nope, sorry. Yep, Saskatchewan, because we've gone in there and we've done a little bit further, providing a little bit further for specific to the province. Homeschooling registration, information about online BC Home Educators Association, etc. A few things, because provincially it can vary, is my understanding. I'm learning as well. I wasn't a homeschool mom. I did, for my son for a little bit. The parent webinars, if you go to under resources, all right, this is where you'll see parent resources, parent webinars. And this is where weekly you can register. But if you sign up and join Action4Canada, then you'll automatically, and you join you select parent group, you will automatically be put on the list to receive the weekly invitation that we send out and the reminders to join this meeting. We meet the second and fourth week of every month. You can see the registration there, and then we've got other important information. But even go check out the parent resource page. And then, as I mentioned, just in closing, the political LGBTQ, we've been on the front line of this. I've been working on all of this since 2015, 2017 on the SOGI, which is they want to spread it across Canada, WinSet, Sex Ed in Ontario. And this is just the information showing that the education system, age 0 to 4, they want to teach children about early childhood masturbation and about, touching and things like this. And it's normal. They're grooming our children. And that's the World Health Organization standard for sexuality. At the WEF, they're just making an announcement down the corridors of the WEF. This is Klaus Schwab, who is the founder of that age gap love laws violate human rights. There has been a massive push to promote and legalize pedophilia. And so it doesn't matter where you are in society right now, they are definitely coming after our children. But I want you to see this section, because this is the good news. This isn't reports from worldwide, but this just gives you an idea. In the States, they are banning the surgical procedures and hormone blockers for children to transition. They are actually banning parental rights and education law, prohibiting inappropriate classroom discussions on sexual orientation and gender identity. All of this came in under Obama. It really pushed through. Soon as Trudeau came in, he was the one. Prime Minister Harper was not really our friend either, but Trudeau has really catapulted it in. So we're a little behind, but the more that we push, we will be where the states are, because elected officials want to get elected. It was a minority of people that brought this travesty into our country and into our education system. We're the majority. We got to get really loud and really squeaky, because they're going to, be oiling this wheel next. And we're already seeing, if you see Action4Canada in the news, CBC, Global, CTV are all reporting on what it is we're doing, because we're very strategic in saying, we've got to stop this in the education system. You need to pull your kids out. And that's why we're focusing on homeschooling right now, to give those parents who are sitting on the fence the courage that they need and the support that you need in order to take this step. You are playing Russian roulette with your child, putting them in the education. Every day they go to school, you don't know what's going to happen. I just got a report of an 8-year-old in Ontario who came home and told his mom that he thinks he's a girl. Now he's putting permanent eyeliner with a marker on his eyes. I was speaking at an engagement last night. Kindergartners, trans, are coming into the schools and they're teaching about their transitions in kindergarten. They are confusing our kids, and it is devastating to see what is happening, tearing these families apart and the irreparable damage to our kids. So anyways, that is why we're doing all of this. This is why that we're bringing Peter on. And okay, so Doris, I'll hand it back to you, and let's fire out these questions to Peter and see how many we can get answered. And then maybe we'll, or do you want to start with the two people that have raised their hands?
Actually, can you hear me? I'm on, yeah?
Yep, you're good.
I was writing down a lot of the questions, and Peter answered a lot of them, but there was 2 or 3 I just wanted to highlight, and then we will go to the hands that I do see up. Just about entering university and post-secondary, there was a question about trade school accreditation process. Just going to give you my own story. I have 3 kids. My oldest challenged her grade 10 so she could join in BC the grad program because she wanted to go to university, and she didn't go right away. And then she challenged UBC to enter, and she won. So that's another way to do it, is challenge these schools to see if you can enter. My other 2 got the homeschool equivalency certificates, and they're entrepreneurs. So they didn't end up going to university or post-secondary or trade school. The accreditation process for trade school, I would say join your provincial homeschool association. Now I've seen at least 3 names pop up already on our screen. Ontario, Saskatchewan, New Brunswick, I see so far. They're part of the associations in those provinces. So go back to our website and you can look up your province. They will know how to guide you to, if you're going to enter a school, post-secondary school in your province. They've got this, and that's where you're going to find the best support. If you're going to, let's say you live in Toronto and you want to go to school in Calgary, I would reach out to both associations to find out how to do that. It's not as hard as you think. And I find every year the rules get, I don't want to say easier, but it's not as overwhelming as you think, and it'll come together. You got to find their support. Okay, so one of the questions for Peter, I have tutoring for families who have immigrated here from other countries. I know many families in my area who have recently immigrated here in the last 3 years, and some are questioning homeschooling, and I can understand them not having the confidence in the English language, let alone homeschooling. So what is there in Canada that we could offer these people?
Well, that wasn't an easy question. That's for sure. Well, yeah, and I see that as one of the big challenges, because we do see so many immigrant families who come from countries where English is not the first language, or if they're coming to Quebec, French is not the first language necessarily, that you know, that they want their kids to be able to succeed in society. They don't have the English language skills themselves as parents necessarily, and don't have the confidence, obviously, to teach them if they don't. And so they want to put their kids into a school system where they'll be surrounded by other kids and in a sense, be forced to learn the language. So that's a real challenge. I don't think there's an easy answer to that, especially if you don't have, you know, if you come as an immigrant, sometimes you're not coming with a lot of money either. If you come as a wealthy person, yes, you can hire a tutor. Do I have an easy answer to that? Not really. You know, as home educated families, what I would say is we tend to get together in support groups and co-ops, but that tends to be, you know, a minority of the week, not the majority of the week. You know, it might be a Friday morning or a Friday afternoon or something like that. And that's not enough time likely for the children of that particular immigrant family to really improve their English language skills the way they'd like, I'm sure. So, you know, is it impossible? I don't think so, but they'd really have to work at it. They'd have to find an awful lot of activities they could do, in a sense, outside the home with others who are native speakers of English, and swimming lessons, music lessons, you could go down the list and find a lot of activities. I would say it's possible, but it would not be easy.
I just want to add to that too. Like, I had friends in the years that I was homeschooling, they were the immigrant parent, but their children were integrated into Canadian culture, speaking English, but the parent felt weak. And I was thinking, it's okay. Yeah. If the parent feels weak, but the child has a grasp of the language and they're young, especially if they're younger, it's okay. It'll work. You just got to find your people around you to, like you said, find all the other activities to add into the basic core curriculum. And the package of raising these kids will work. You just got to find their support people.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to say, on these websites too, for the associations, they break it down into regions. I've noticed Ontario, like Heather is online here, and she's really broken it down. So depending on what region in the province, your support group is there locally for you. It's not just this massive group. And then you get to actually see real people and be with them. So that's really exciting.
That's an incredibly complicated question to answer. And the answer is going to be ultimately, it depends. Now, that's a lawyer's answer. But to give a little more clarity, depends on your province. The laws are different in every province. It depends on the hours of operation. It depends on who is supervising the children, who is teaching the children, how many children are involved, the ages of the children. There are a lot of factors that are necessary to consider before that could even be answered. But what I will say is this in general, because there have been a lot of these, what we would probably, they've become to be known as teaching pods or learning pods over the last few years, and sort of the model that you were talking about. If the parents are not involved, this is really not home education. I mean, home education is not about the location. It's not about the home per se. It's about education that is parent-led and parent-directed. So if you take the parent out of the situation, it's no longer home education. Doesn't matter whether it's even happening in your home. If you're not involved as the parent, it's not home education. The converse is also true. So what we're really talking about in some provinces when these teaching pods get formed is actually a private school. So for example, in the province of Ontario, what I heard described there in general terms would actually be considered a private school. If you're dropping your kids off, it's definitely not home education, no matter where you are. Somebody else is teaching your kids. And as you say, if you have a few families in your home and it's, one day a week, that can still be definitely considered home education. So again, there's such a wide spectrum of possibilities in that question that it's very hard to narrow down. If you want specific advice on this question, do call our office, and as a member, you'd be entitled to a consultation with our lawyer to sort of go through the specifics of your particular situation.
British Columbia, there is, and I'm sure some other provinces are similar, they have the traditional homeschooling, which is how homeschooling started, and which is what I did. There's online learning at home. So you get a dedicated teacher, but you're at home. But, legally under BC law, that's not homeschooling. But a lot of people think they're homeschooling because their child's at home. You still have control over the education though. And then the third option is two pilot schools in New Westminster and Surrey, the Compass Learning Centers, where there's no government funding, and they're meeting in two churches, Monday to Thursday, sometimes Friday. The class sizes are small. They're doing a classical education. It's the homeschooling approach, but technically not homeschool because you're not at home. But this accommodates families who are working and just can't make ends meet without working. And so that was launched maybe 2 years ago. In Kelowna, where I live, they're starting, so Heritage Christian Online School is launching a school called Flex Academy in September, where you homeschool your kid 3 or 4 days a week, and then you go to this activity center, and there's a teacher in the classroom where the kids, you know, they socialize, interact, and then the teacher follows up on, it's a very tailored education to what the child was learning at home. Then they create activities around what they learned in that classroom setting. So we'll see how that goes. Both of them are very new, but it's allowed in BC. It may not be allowed in your province, but in BC it's allowed.
I was just going to mention every alternating Tuesday we do a pastor meeting, and last week we had Pastor Paul Dirks come on, and he is the one that commenced this Compass education in the church in New West and in Surrey. So we're going to add that to the webinar page on the parent page because we think it's really important, and maybe the next one will actually play that webinar, and that will be our meeting because it's very interesting. He gives incredible information, and so that's when I was saying how we're working with churches. More churches want to do this sort of education because traditionally, biblically, this is what we should be doing. We should be taking on education within the church, and we should be raising our kids up. We shouldn't be handing them over to a government. And if I'm not mistaken, if churches do open up and there's homeschooling parents that want to come together and use their gifts and talents, as Peter was saying, you may not be strong in calculus, but there may be another parent. And so you can break up and split up these classes with the kids. And as long as I understand that the parents are there and present, that is considered like a homeschooling network. Others can be doing sports. A father can show up and have all the kids to change the oil one day. And there is ways of doing this without having the government interference.
If you are in Alberta, they have a live homeschool conference April 29th, so next weekend. So you want to go to that website and it'll show the convention. These are exciting. Those are like the best days ever to go to a convention. Ontario is May 5 and 6, and New Brunswick, June 2 and 3. Looks like Saskatchewan and Manitoba already have theirs. But if you can get to one or drive over to your neighboring province, I would encourage you to go. You will find so much support there. And yeah, it's exciting. You should go.
Okay, great. Prior to COVID, I always say our problems weren't COVID, it was pre-COVID. And so there was a bill C-75, and I think it was 2017 or 18, Peter, maybe you remember it. And what they were doing is they were lessening the consequences for crimes associated with sexual assaults. Justin Trudeau, when he came into office, one of the first things he made a priority was to lower anal sex from the age of 18 to 16. So they have been working towards normalizing pedophilia. The SOGI resource, what I call it's a grooming resource. It's national, it's international, and it is called the Comprehensive Sexuality Education. SOGI 123, WinSexEd are known as comprehensive sexuality education. It is something that the UN is massively pushing for member nations to incorporate, and it is to sexualize children at the earliest age possible. The UN, UNICEF, etc., they're all in on this. I call them pedophile central. And so you can see the WHO is in on it with their standards to, encourage children to masturbate. We've got multiple reports related to SOGI. The sexual health has been completely integrated. It's no longer about biology, science, and facts. It's about ideologies. And so the WEF has now come out and they're pushing to remove, they call it age gap love laws because they violate human rights. It's a very, very sinister, evil, serious attack. Back in August and September last year, I did these two videos. I would encourage you, again, it's on the political LGBTQ page under current issues. Just immerse yourself in some of this information. I did a presentation last night and I'm so sad that I didn't record it because I provided all of the work that we're doing in local school districts. We're being banned from school districts, even though we're very professional. The information, the RCMP have come out and said that these books are not pornographic under the law. I've had conversations last week with the top RCMP in British Columbia, but I'm going to be meeting with RCMP in the near future as well. So I have hope that we'll have somebody in this nation that is reasonable to understand this is not educational material and it is not literature. That's what they're deeming it under the criminal code. It is not pornographic. In other videos, the ones I've showed you, I actually show you a PDF that we have online with the books, which is on the page. Right. And this is what, next thing you know, that's why Peter was stressing the resources and the books they have. They've very carefully look those over to make sure that they're wholesome education for your kids. We do have moral laws in this country, but these maniacs are just pushing everything normal to the side in order to push their agenda. And we're fighting for what's already our rights, and already our rights to protect our children from these individuals is the job that Action for Canada is working very hard on. And Peter, I'd like to talk to you more as well about how we shut this down in the education system, because it's seeping in everywhere. Yeah. Okay, well, Peter, any closing words for
I'll just put in the chat here. We do have a list of conferences coming up across Canada on our website, and so Doris mentioned some of them, and there are a few more: Alberta, Nova Scotia, Ottawa, and some smaller ones even that are happening this weekend in Ontario, Tillsonburg and Waterloo. So the full list is there if everybody wants to check that out. Really, the only ones that have happened so far are Saskatchewan and Manitoba. So you're kind of out of luck in those two provinces. But if you live in Saskatchewan, you can still get to Alberta for the big Alberta conference. And that's the biggest in the country, actually. The AHIA conference happens in Red Deer late May, and that will be quite exciting. So thank you for having me.
Wonderful.
We're available to answer questions. The two websites we've talked about, homeschool.today, that's just a free resource. And if people have questions about homeschooling, feel free to email that through that website at any time. I think there's a chat function available as well, and we'll get your question answered. And of course, we welcome people to join our organization through HSLDA.ca.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Peter. I want to let everybody know that this webinar will be on the parent webinar page so that you can share it with others. Make it go viral. This is such critical information. I want to thank Doris, our parent lead, and she has provided her email address as well. If you have questions, please, we'll also post it in the description, some of the chat information. And we want you to be able to access a chapter. And as you see, as this has built the conversation, why it's important to be part of a chapter. You'll have support. We have strategies and campaigns that we're doing. And it's great because we even have activities for the kids to get involved in their future as well. So again, thank you to everybody for spending this time with us. And again, thank you, Peter. We're going to have you back and talk a little bit more. So, all right, thanks. That's a wrap.